going back to the title of our presentation, easier implementation of BCRs, what I'll be dealing with is, going forward, what are BCRs going to look like in the next coming couple of months and years. One of the things that strikes me with BCRs is that it's an accountability-based approach. It's, in that sense, a sign of what future data protection frameworks may look like. And let me explain it a little bit more in detail. BCRs is an example of a product, or actually a method, a concept that requires organizations to not merely comply with the, prescriptions of data protection laws, but to be more proactive and to actually take on and demonstrate their willingness and their ability to actually comply with data protection laws, and to be accountable when things go wrong. And in that sense, if you look at certain initiatives across the globe, you see the policymakers and legislators tend to shift slightly more towards the accountability approach, meaning requiring organizations not simply to abide by the rules and then sit down, but also, to be more proactive and say, we'll be adopting a policy, we'll demonstrate that we're not only willing to actually comply with those rules, but also capable to do so. And if things go wrong, we're actually able to accept any complaints and deal with them. And I think basically, if you look at, for instance, the APIC framework, if you look at the public consultation that the European Commission is currently conducting with regard to the future data protection framework, if you look at the Australian privacy principles that were, not mistaken, at least the draft version was published last week, in each of those documents you see traces of the idea of accountability, of organizations being more proactive. So in that sense, binding corporate rules may be just a next step towards, or in a broader development towards requiring organizations to step up and say, we're going to do more than just simply abide by the prescriptions of data protection rules. I think there's 5 principles underlying this accountability approach. First of all, organizers, as I said, need to show and to demonstrate that they're willing and capable to comply with the laws and to adopt policies. They need, obviously, to have a comprehensive data protection policy in place. But in addition to that, and this is where it becomes tricky and as Michael says, more expensive, is you need to have mechanisms in place to allow you to actually abide by your own privacy policy, your own privacy objectives, but also to take on liability when things go wrong. Now, what I'm now talking about, regular training of personnel, conducting privacy impact assessments when you're considering a new project, implementing a proper governance structure that allows you to more effective and efficiently manage data processing within your organization. A third point and a third essential element of accountability is audit. It's not because you've got these policies in place, it's not because you've got these mechanisms in place that allow you to bring those policies to life that you should sit down and just relax. Accountability requires organizations to actually conduct regular audits to see, are we still in line with those privacy promises? And in addition to that, to accept DPAs coming along and conducting themselves data protection audits. A fourth point, and obviously a very important one, is transparency. Transparency directly towards individuals, allowing, facilitating individual participation by providing data protection notices, explaining clearly what information you'll be processing about individuals, why you're doing this, how you'll be doing this, and providing access and the right to correct those personal information if they turn out to be inaccurate. And the last point, and this is also a very important one, and this is one that we have, I wouldn't say struggle, but we've spent quite a lot of time on the third-party beneficiary clause and the enforcement mechanism behind BCRs. It's a very essential element of BCRs. I think that's also a typical sign of the broader tendency for organizations to take on responsibility and to make it possible for individuals to easily file complaints and to address those complaints, whether via internal complaint handling mechanisms or even via using external service providers for receiving and handling those claims.